Okay, welcome to Intro with Murta on how to piss your channel completely off. Anyway, I got suggested to actually do a political compass test, which I was like, you know what, fine, this is gonna set my channel aflames, but I am really good at losing subscribers, so it can't be worse than it already is. Anyways, for those that don't know me, I do not subscribe to a political compass. I try to stay apolitical and I judge ideas for the sake of them being an idea that either appeals to me or doesn't appeal to me, regardless of whether it's coming from the left or the right. I do not take the political standing of the idea into consideration, meaning that oftentimes things that I support versus things that I do not support ends up being a complete mishmash that ends up having absolutely everyone be angry with me, for I do not support to their path absolutely fully. I only support parts of their path, and then I support parts of the path that they do not like. From my perspective, this is just being a normal human being. I don't actually know of many caricatures that could be like, yes, I love absolutely everything that is on that list, and I hate absolutely everything that is on that list. Those kind of people are either really, really rare, or they're tricking themselves into thinking it because they're like, everything on that list is right and I am sure of it. If I was in Star Wars, I would be a great Jedi because both are tools at your disposal. Why the duality? Why the duality? So tests like these also don't work for me because they never have like the middle answer of I am indifferent to it. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of absolutely splintering my channel, we're actually gonna either agree or disagree with statements. And feel free to be angry at me in the comment section down below. So page 1 out of 6, I am pretty sure that we're starting with something about economy. I'm not gonna be reading a lot of mumbo jumbo in this, I'm just gonna do the test. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I strongly agree with this, but I interpret humanity as in human beings, meaning what I interpret is, if globalization is inevitable, corporations that span multi-nations should be pro their own workers rather than pro-boss's pocket. Unfortunately, corporations that span many nations right now will outsource the manufacturing jobs to countries that are very cheap to manufacture in, where they have a lot less safety regulations, abusing their workers, and also stealing jobs from richer countries where people, yes, would still do manufacturing jobs because having a job as a millennial is sometimes really hard. A lot of people will do this and that. A lot of people will work multiple jobs. A lot of people work more than 40 hours a week, myself included. I do 40 hours a week plus a lot of this and that. So this is my interpretation of the question. I would always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Strongly disagreeing here. If my country has decided to, I don't know, genocide a small tribe, I am definitely not for it. I am really questioning my country's decisions. If you cannot think clearly in a country, if you're just gonna support it because it is your own country, then I am sorry, but there's no nice way of putting this, so I'm gonna try and put it as nicely as I can. You have been whisked away by group mentality to a point where you have allowed it to override your own common sense. If you think that what your country is doing is morally wrong, but you are still absolutely all for supporting it because it is your own country, there is an inner turmoil that you're absolutely ignoring there. by attempting to feel good. Effectively, if you can recognize an action as morally wrong, you should then not have the decision-making process to go, but I'm still gonna support it because it's my country. It's one thing if you do not identify the action as morally wrong, for morals are subjective and not objective, so a lot of people will interpret what is morally right and wrong completely differently based on the culture that they grew up in and based on their own personal moral compass. But here, quite specifically, you are identifying something as being completely morally wrong, but then you, with all your cheer, go, but yeah, it's my country! You have definitely been swept away by group mentality, and please use that head of yours because you have identified a thing in your life that should be causing inner turmoil, but you're writing it off, which doesn't stand well with me. No one chooses their country of birth, so it is foolish to be proud of it. This is one of those questions where I would be like, indifferent. I am not gonna call anybody a fool for being proud of where they came from, but at the same time, nobody chose where to be born. The same way as nobody chose skin color to be born with. So yes, you can be proud of these features, and I will in no way ever insult your ability to be proud of said features, mainly because being proud and feeling good about yourself is better than putting yourself down for absolutely no reason. So yes, be proud, be happy, but at the same time, you have done absolutely nothing to accomplish this. You were just born. So, slight disagree. This is why it's hard for me. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I want an indifferent button. Again, I disagree. Slight disagree. I do not consider a race to be superior or inferior because every single genetic variation will come with a lot of genetic variations attributed to it. So you might be able to run slightly faster. You might grow taller on average. You might be 1% more resistant to heart disease or 1% less resistant to heart disease, but this does not make you superior or inferior. This is genetic variation, which can also be highly overwritten by your own personalized genetic variation. For example, my genetic defects are a lot more prominent for me than whatever my skin color has given me. Like, my skin color plays a lot less of a point on the genetic variation problems list than my genetic defects do. For example, I am having yet another migraine right now. Oh joy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Strongly disagree, but I need a button that says depends on the situation. My friend is my friend. If the enemy of my enemy is agreeable with me, we might strike a friendship. That being said, literally no idea what this has to do with a political compass. Please tell me whether the right or the left consider the enemy of the enemy their friend, and why not the other side, and why not both, and why either? This is just a very personalized and pointless question. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Sometimes makes me go for soft agree. I need an indifferent button or depends on the situation button. Sometimes international action will be complete inaction, and complete inaction will cause a lot more misery than, you know, actually taking action. At the same time, there are very good reasons why these rules are in place. So So I do not support wholesale breaking of them. I say take it case by case basis. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I'm gonna say strongly agree here. Some of this is not bad. Like, for example, people doing experiments with their technology at home. That's pretty fun. Or people showcasing cooking recipes, people talking about space. People that are passionate about this. This is completely fine, but a lot of things end up being sensationalist to a point where you can easily fall into a cycle of misinformation because the information is being spread more for entertainment basis than for anything else. Next page. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Soft agree. If you could address the inequalities of strong versus rich, then I might, of rather poor versus rich, then I might be able to pinpoint nationality causing issues and division there. But for the time being, I think the gaps in people's earnings and their inability to have time and just the whole pitfall of economy is a more pressing issue. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Neither. I can't even pick a button here, so I'm just gonna pick at random. Neither. The measure of unemployment will not always be a bad one. For example, if you have multiple adults that can subside off one adult's wage, there is no reason why the rest of the adults are having to do the work that you want them to do. They have sorted out their own little personal living arrangements, and that is their business. But you will take the statistic of them being unemployed and go, oh, that is a bad thing. At the same time, unemployment, when employment is needed and wanted, is a bad thing. Because that would mean that you're not providing enough jobs for people to be able to comfortably sustain themselves and to serve their part in the society. Control of inflation in the current times is almost pointless. We are in a massive pandemic which is doing horrible things to all economies anyway. And we are almost switching to meme economy because people are just inventing money as they go along and they're fixing the stocks as they go along. So you know what? If you're gonna play with money to make yourself rich, then the internet's gonna play me money by inventing meme money. So really not a relevant question anymore. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulations. I strongly agree. I don't want all companies to be regulated on every single little thing, but we can see that companies left to their own devices will oftentimes try to cut corners in favor of cost-saving measures, because why spend more when you can spend less? So when it comes to sustainability questions and when it comes to questions of what they're using and what they're producing and everything related to that, yes, I do believe in regulation. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is fundamentally a good idea, indifferent, or depends on the situation. It's hard to explain this one. Like, it's actually hard to explain this one. According to their need would imply that you are not gonna allow people to have access. And if they have earned and made access, they should be able to have access. They should be able to enjoy their access. They shouldn't be obliged to give that all away. But at the same time, we should not be leaving people behind just because they do not have the full ability. If they still want to contribute to the society and they're eager to contribute, we should be accepting that contribution and we should be making space for them. And in a society that's based on X amount of work for X amount of hours for X amount of money, 9 to 5, you must be able to do this. The space for these people is just not there. While if we were a more community-based society, maybe they would be doing work share, maybe they would be doing a couple of hours at the library here and there, and that would be perfectly fine. But these kind of flexible working arrangements, they tend to be really hard to find. So it's like, from each according to its ability, strongly agree, to each according to his needs, strongly disagree. The fuck do I do? Slight agree to be on the positive side. The freer the market, the freer the people. Hard to say. Indifferent. Do not ask me. Have no opinion on this matter. I suppose I do want the companies to be regulated in the sense that they provide fair working environment to their employees and fair pay, and they're held to that standard. So this isn't Wild West disagree? It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled, branded a consumer product. I slightly disagree. I mean, it is a sad reflection of our society when that drinking water is not available in your community. In my case, I can drink tap water and it's perfectly fine. The bottled water is just slightly tastier water. It's a luxury in that sense. It is not the same for absolutely everybody though. So this answer will vary situation to situation. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Disagree, just simply because I like to be able to own my place. I like to have the ownership of that. I currently do not. I have the ownership of my flat, and I have a lease of over 100 years. So it will outlast me, but it is not something that I can pass down to, and it is something that's going to devalue in value as time progresses. Like, for example, in my home country, where flats do not come with leases, and therefore, when my grandma passes away, that flat goes to probably my mother, and it continues existing in our family. And if the government wants to rebuild the building, they have to buy the flat off us, which is a lot better system. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I strongly agree, for the simple sense of, you can be a good person, like good at stock market, that doesn't like make you a super good person or a bad person. That says absolutely nothing about your own personality. But you will not be manipulating the market. But there is plenty of people that do collude and manipulate the market, and effectively it's an in club, and that in club they cannot actually go poor because they will just readjust the numbers to fit them. It's like they're on this completely separate line from the rest of the schmucks that are left chasing a fantasy. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I don't know what that means, so I'm just gonna click agree here. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Agreed, except in the sense that they have to be mindful about how they're sourcing and producing their goods, which is where regulation steps in. They have to be mindful not to litter. But at the same time, a brand is not your friend. If I am coming for you for a burger, I want a burger, not a speech. Just sell me the burger. We're fine. The rich are too highly taxed. Depends on the country, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna strongly disagree with that on all of them. Well, some countries have interesting taxes where they will take like 50% of everything that you own, but for example, on YouTube, I am earning $11 per month. Now I'm losing 25% of that to taxes. The fuck? The tax system is just so if you're earning $100,000 per month and you're losing 25% of them to taxes, I have no pity for you, because I am in the same situation except with way less money. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Somewhat disagree. You shouldn't be judged on your wealth. At the same time, I do not mind the private medical industry from existing. It's completely up to you if you want to go to a private hospital, and my mother often would in order to skip queues. For example, if you know that you want these and these blood tests, in the regular public system, you would go to a doctor, they would ask why, then they would calculate how much it would cost for them to do this, then they're like, could we instead do a couple of basic ones, because we don't want to waste money, and you would eventually either have to persevere severely or get nowhere. Well, you can just skip that queue and go to a private clinic. That being said, in a public clinic, I wouldn't want the person to be treated on their monetary status. I feel like everyone should be entitled to the exact same healthcare. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Strongly agree. Businesses should not be misleading the public to begin with, because I read that as selling you a faulty product, effectively. If you're gonna tell me that this toothpaste is gonna make my teeth whiter, but instead it's gonna cause me mouth cancer, I don't just want you penalized, I want you fucking sued to the floor and shut down. What kind of question is that? A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Agreed in practice, strongly disagree in sentence. Genuine free market with restrictions is an oxymoron. It's not something that you can have together, so we're gonna strongly disagree on the sentence. Whether it is something that you should do, yes. Because otherwise you just will have the situation like you do with Google of nobody can compete with their fucking engine, because they are the go-to company for a search engine, and they will try and shut you down and sue you to the floor, and they try to expand into various different places, and being the small fish in the pond, even if you found something really revolutionary, will be super hard, and just the fact that big companies will try to unfairly block you out of said pond. Personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be legal. No, just strongly disagree. If you wanna have an abortion, you'll be able to have an abortion, no questions asked. The alternative is that that child is born into a lot of unhappiness and lives a shitty life, either as an orphan or with a very resentful mother. That is not a nice life too. If you want to reduce the amount of abortions in your society, you should probably tackle the problems that are causing the abortions and not the action of the abortion itself. If there is more people making wise decisions when it comes to their partners and making stable families, and I am not saying that encourage a specific partner and discourage this, discourage that, but if they're creating stable families that they can support themselves in and live comfortably, in which they are happy, more often than not, that will likely result in children, as opposed to them living in unstable families, being unhappy and working 80 hours per week. If you want to attribute the fall of children making in this generation to absolutely anything, I would say attribute to the fact that both adults in the family have to be working in order to support a single household, and even then, affording property themselves might be just a goal that is absolutely unreachable. This is without talking about the fact that most people do more than 40 hours a week. Most people work for majority of their time because they are also bouncing side gig to make that extra side money in order to have something. It is actually so bad that I received a question, which I then posted on Discord and everybody thought was actually quite relatable. Is this cat cafe on your bucket to-do list for places to visit? And it was a cat cafe in Japan, and I'm sure that it is a lovely place, but the first thing that went through my mind was, you think I will ever be able to afford going to Japan? And then I thought how sad that is, considering that I have a full-time job. I do YouTube, I do Twitch, I do tarot readings on the side, and I always think about how to expand my side gigs. It's to a point where I have to reconsider ideas twice over. Ideas that would make me personally uncomfortable that I have ruled against. I'm like, I'd rather live with I have nots than violate myself on the internet. And I'm not saying that this is what other people are doing, maybe they are enjoying, but to give an example, selling my body online would be a violation of myself to myself. It would mean that I have fallen to such a pit of despair that I need this so desperately that I will do so. Which, if it means absolutely nothing to you personally, and you're completely fine with it, absolutely do it. But for me, it would be a hit at my self-esteem, and it would be a hit at my ego. So it is something that I will not be considering doing. That being said, this is a 2-adult household. We do not have children. Yet I know for sure that I will not be able to afford to keep my teeth, for example. I know for sure that I will never visit Japan. For example, this is like not a question. That's not even a thought that passes my head. Like, I have accepted the status quo to a point where I'm like, what consideration is there? It's kind of like when people go, oh, what about retirement? And you go, what about retirement? I'm gonna be working until I die. That is just the reality of my situation. What about it? And not like a glimmer of sadness, not regret that passes you. You just like, this is just a fact of life. This is just how things are. What about it? And looking from outside, you go, wow, that is sad. But looking from inside in, I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I am gonna go on ghost hunts for vacation when I can. I mean, those events are like 40, 50 pounds. And I can probably afford an overnight stay, and I can plan for that. And I can be happy about that. So the thought that comes through my head is not like, I will never see Japan. The thought that comes through my head is, oh boy, I can't wait to do that fun thing that's a whole lot cheaper that I thought I will eventually be doing. This has resolved in a complete rant. I'm so sorry. All authority should be questioned. I disagree. If you will forever live questioning everybody else's authority, that will expend a lot of your time. Like, if I go to a doctor's office, I'm not gonna be questioning the credentials of my office, of my doctor, unless I have a good reason to do so. If I give my car to a mechanic, I will not question the credentials of the mechanic, unless, of course, he does something silly or foolish or is rated extremely badly. If I go around questioning absolutely every single little thing, there will be no headspace left thinking. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Strongly disagree. That just ends up going in like an infinite, never-ending loop of, you have stabbed my son's eye out, so I am gonna take your eye out as a fitting punishment. And now the other family goes, okay, we feel wronged. We want an eye to pay for this eye, and it just continues going back and forth. And that's how never-ending family feuds happen to begin with. So no, just strongly disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Strongly disagree. I do not know a lot of countries that are actually funding their arts, but this isn't even like arts. This is... Museum is your relics of the past. It's not necessarily a commercial thing, it's you preserving what was there. So to say that we should not preserve what was there because it isn't commercially viable to do so, it's a dumb statement to me. To me, it just sounds like, let's not preserve knowledge because it's not commercially viable to do so. At that point, we are monetizing our past, so just because they worded it like theaters or museums, I'm gonna strongly disagree here. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I am gonna click strongly agree here. What should be important is the qualifications. Every child should get that education, but classroom attendance being compulsory to me sounds like absolutely every single child should be placed in a school where they sit next to 20, 30, 40, however many children listening to a teacher. While that is not necessarily to everyone's ability, somebody who has mobility issues might find it a lot easier to take a class online or have a one-on-one with their teacher at their house. Somebody that has sensory issues might have a lot easier time in a specially prepared smaller classroom for them that is not necessarily in a public school building. So everybody should have access to that education, but not everybody should attend the exact same classroom by force. The knowledge should be imparted. How you impart the knowledge should be catered to the person's needs. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Strongly disagree because the sentence just rubs me the wrong way at the point. If this was a human and not a test sheet, I would be like, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean by kind? Culture, skin color, language, level of wealth? There is a lot of ways for you to identify kin and not kin. And what I identify as kin and not kin is it has a spiritual context more than anything. I will identify a lot of people as not my own kind, despite any matching qualifications that they might have outwardly. I will identify my own kind spiritually. That does not mean that I do not mix with people that are not my own kind. So it all depends on how you present the sentence, but all I have to work with is this sentence, and that just not do. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Not a nice question. I don't know what it has to do with political leanings. I would answer with neither, but that's just not a choice, so I am once again really conflicted. I'm just gonna press a soft disagree. You see, there is the issue with you can run into the problem of you do not have a legal way to control your child and therefore mold them to be a more acceptable member of the society, but at the same time, I do not condone or support child abuse. I have grew up in a place where physical contact in that way was completely legal, and if you want somebody to not touch something, doing that, just go, don't touch that, that is hot, leave it alone, is quite effective because it gives them a shock. But at the same time, this is a physical interaction that can be perceived as negative. It can be painful. And so that sort of interaction I find to be very acceptable and even necessary in a household. And without the legal permission to do that sort of interaction, I feel like we may be bringing up worse people. But at the same time, there's just so much child abuse, even around the people that I grew up with. My friend's father, when he wouldn't like something, he would beat them with a belt, and he has done permanent nerve and especially backbone spinal damage to his children by doing that with the belt buckle, because guess what, your spine ends like at your butt crack. That's where it ends. So soft disagree for the case of I am not pro abuse, but you get what I mean. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Agreed. It is actually quite natural for people to lie and to try and develop those habits of lying. Some information, when it's withheld from an adult, it is dangerous, especially if a family member is abusing a child or something like that. But to say that it's unnatural for Mary to have eaten a cookie before she was allowed to, and then lying that she didn't eat the cookie and permanently keeping that as a secret that she did in fact ate a cookie, that's perfectly human. That is human behavior. It is very much natural human behavior. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. I strongly agree with that. I feel like possessing a lot of substances that are not necessarily dangerous to you should not be a criminal offense, especially considering that we can possess substances that are dangerous to us. For example, alcohol. So sometimes people go, oh, but if everybody was high, they wouldn't be productive. And that is true, but at the same time, an alcoholic is also not productive. But you see, alcohol is a legal substance to buy and to use personally. Therefore, my way of thinking is that these kind of things should be a personal responsibility, as in you should understand moderation. By the time that you're an adult, you should understand moderation. There's plenty of legal substances that you can practice moderation with, so you should understand moderation in here too. Now, there are substances that I would say shouldn't be widely available. I know that some people will disagree, but I don't think that use of crack, for example, should be up to personal decision making, because it is just a really harmful substance, and we would all be better if it just didn't exist at all. Honestly. An addict is an addict, and they can't really help it, and they drive themselves to the grave, and it is sad, for we have lost a person. At the same time, I can't make them stop being an addict. I can't take that trait away from them, and I will get to sit there and watch them drive themselves to death. Some servers that I'm on, there are a couple addicts that come online and they're homeless and they're living on the streets, and sometimes they make statements that we'll make fun out of, because normally when they come onto the server they're under the influence. So for example, you're sitting in an occult server and you're discussing religion or whatever, and a known cocaine user will come on and say, I counted my fingers today. What do you say to that? But at the same time, everybody's kind of sad in the server because you can see this person's decline and you can see the fact that they're gonna be dead. People don't survive these for a long amount of time, but at the same time, you can't change that in a person. You can't change that in a person that is addicted. You can't just take that trait. It has to be their decision, and it requires a lot of willpower, and a lot of people do not have that, and they should not necessarily be blamed for that. It would have been better if they had never had the access to that substance at all, but marijuana to me is not one of those substances. The prime function of a schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Strongly disagree. The prime function of schooling to me should be to give you a basic overview of what is the currently acceptable view of the world. So we have your history, we have geology, we have biology for that. And also, what I would like the schools to do is to teach you to think for yourself, which means basic training in logic and basic training in creativity. And this is always taken extremely badly, especially training in creativity. Oftentimes, if you go to like an arts class and they go, draw a forest, they will then say, you drew the forest wrong. And that is just not a thing. You cannot draw a forest wrong, because that is creativity. You should promote creative thinking. You shouldn't care if a child drew the trees orange or if the sun is purple. That is perfectly fine. You gave them an idea, you inspired them, and you watched them go, and through repetitive process of doing that over and over and over again, they're gonna have a better technique, and through engaging with this daily, they're gonna end up with more imaginative thoughts, which should be the whole point of training creativity. So our schooling system is not necessarily set up to make a well-rounded person, but the way that I see it, it's not to just put you out to a job market. If you're going for a lower level job, for example, a factory job, you will learn nothing at school that will help you in the factory job. But at the same time, wasting time training somebody for a factory job in a school does not make sense when the job can just provide you a basic overview of what you are supposed to be doing, especially considering with how many new jobs pop up every single year, and they all might need a complete different skill set. So you might want to just target general human development rather than specific branch of a specific thing that might change later down the line. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree, because this is a slippery slope. You should not be able to control other people's reproduction decisions. It's just, when you go, you have hereditary blindness or hereditary deafness or anything, I don't know, hereditary missing legs or whatever, and you go, you as a person are not allowed to breed, you are then treating them as a lower level of society, even though they're a person, they're human. They're able completely to function on their own. They have obviously created a family, if this has even arisen as a question. So No, you should not be able to control other people's reproduction rights, but you should be thinking about how to fix specific flaws in people. And I don't mean to force the fixes onto people, but some people will say, oh, genetic diversity is very important. I would not treat my flaw no matter what, and that is you, that is perfectly fine. But if I had a way to not to pass on my genetic flaws to my children, I would take that. That would rank high on my priority list. But at the same time, if you were like, you cannot breed because you have those genetic flaws, I would be like, wait a minute. I can live with them. I can function with them. Who are you to decide that for me? So no, it's strongly disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Strongly disagree, unless of course you want to be training drone ants. In that case, yes. Yes, men. People that will nod their heads and be a good worker. You should be teaching your child to think. If you teach your child to think right, it might mean that their values will align absolutely no way with your values, but you can still figure out how they arrived at the decisions that they arrived at. And you will likely still be proud of them because they are using their brain and they're making their own life decisions. It's not drone ants that we're making people. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Yes, agreed. It's a bit weird to go out and to go, oh, those people, they are savages. Savages to me has a very negative connotation. At the moment, there are people who are living rurally outside of the global society that have never had the chance to learn the ways of the global society. That does not necessarily make them savage. There is some issues where we value the preservation of those cultures to an unhealthy level sometimes. Like when, I forget what it was, but an Amazon tribe has actually found their way out of the Amazon, and they encountered a small village on the side, and they brought a gift of pottery. And scientists got very, very concerned and stopped people from interacting because they're like, you are gonna wreck their culture. They're gonna see this whole globalization thing and they're gonna start adapting things from here, and that is bad. No, that is definitely not bad. That is definitely not bad. That should be a choice. That should be a thing. That should be up to them. You shouldn't be trying to preserve people like some sort of animal in a zoo of going, look at these tribes that we have very specifically isolated and not allowed them to make that decision to interact so that they could not see everything that we have done because we want to forcibly preserve their way of life. That is the wrong way of going about it, but at the same time, I am just not there. I don't agree with calling people savages in general. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Agree. It depends. This sentence could be interpreted in a very, very selfish way, which I am interpreting it. As in, I am lazy. I can do work. I was offered work. I have decided not to do this work because I don't want to do work and I still want to get paid. But at the same time, this is, I feel like, is rarely the situation. What we normally get is I have been offered a 0-hour contract, which is unstable as all fuckery, and it will not pay for my rent. So I have refused it. The government took that as me being unwilling to work. So in the purely selfish way, yes, but that is not the situation for most people, and I think that's what's important to understand here. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I don't understand how this in any way, shape, or form is to do with politics, but yes, normally it's our stress reaction even. Let's say that there's a death in the family. What you will see people doing is very rational things. For example, your grandma has just had a heart attack in the living room and they couldn't resuscitate her. The coroner's office has come in. They're taking her body away. And you're in the kitchen cooking cookies. This is a stress reaction in people. They will try to keep busy, which is why we organize funerals, which is why we even put on these big events. It's to keep busy. It's to keep doing something, to keep your mind from effectively breaking. You might start cleaning the floor over and over again. So yes, that is only natural. You keep busy in order to keep yourself away from thinking about things that are making you distraught that you cannot change. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Knowing who I am, strongly disagree. I'm not gonna even go further than that. What's good for a most successful corporation is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree. What's good for strongly successful corporations is often complete abuse of their workforce. It's like the opposite of what's good for people. No broadcasting institution, however independent this content, should receive public funding. You know, it's weird. I would rather theaters were funded publicly than television. I find theaters to be a lot more culturally enriching, and I find that when television gets funded, they try and get into the government's ass in order to be funded. Or you get the situation like UK where they try to get inside the government's ass in order to get funded. Plus, everybody is forced to pay the compulsory fee if they own a TV, which is primarily the reason why I don't own one. And honestly, I am not missing one. How you see the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counter-terrorism. Soft agree. There have been a lot of suggestions made that I wouldn't agree with, such as having to use your ID to get online and having your real name attached to everything that you do. I find that personal safety issue more than anything. For one thing, if you are in an abusive place, you're not gonna be sending an SOS under your real name because your abuser can see. Another thing is that, well, if people find out where you live and who you are, they can come on over and cause some harm, because we live in a very polarized society where people feel so strongly about absolutely everything that they would consider doing so. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay process in a democratic political system. I strongly agree with the statement, but I am not agreeing with having a one-party state, because that just sounds like a dictatorship with extra steps. But that is a completely correct statement. Congratulations. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. There are many reasons why I wouldn't want people investigating me online. And why, for example, I would not disclose my religious status on the census. They might get ideas that I am a completely different person from the kind of person that I am simply because of their ingrained fears and ingrained taboos that come with specific subjects. So no, there's always something that people can misinterpret about a person. So no, just not surveillance in general in that field. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I do strongly agree. There is the issue that it causes where some people that have been sentenced to death have been sentenced to death wrongly. But that's more to do with badly operating legal system rather than anything. But at the same time, if somebody is like a mass murderer and you're absolutely certain that they're a mass murderer, 100% certain, why are you keeping him alive in a place where you're feeding and clothing him for like the next 60 years? I don't see that as a benefit to the society. They're not gonna get out either way. And if you're absolutely certain, then yeah. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. I just hate that dichotomy in general. Something about it strikes me as wrong. It's been over an hour. I can't really articulate things well anymore, so I'm just gonna say that by gut feeling, master and slave, master and servant, dichotomy, it just strikes me fairly wrong. I feel like in a lot of places as well, title does mean something, but it's a lot more fluid these ways. Like, in a company, you have like the CEO, but you also treat him like a person. You're not just like, yes, master, yes! I must obey your every whim! That's not what happens in general. He's the guy that hired you to do your job and that pays you money, but at the same time, you hang out with him after work hours, that sort of thing. And there's levels of interaction that you wouldn't touch with that person, for example, romantic interaction, because that would go against a lot of laws, and there's a lot of work side dynamics that would have a lot of issue with that. But in the sense they're a human being, and it's a lot less rigid than it used to be. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. I strongly disagree, because please prove to me that it doesn't represent anything to begin with. Let me show you an example. This is the kind of things that I produce, right? And from outside perspective, well, to begin with, I'm not selling them. This is abstract art. From outside perspective, this doesn't represent anything. From my perspective, in order to get here, I wrote a poem, I encoded the intent, I turned that into a symbolic language, and then I digitally processed the whole thing in order to make it fairly unrecognizable, meaning that it carries a lot of meaning to me. In fact, it carries like 12 sentences worth of meaning to me, oftentimes. And that is what I do with all the art that I produce, including my own banner, as you can see. So it is all meaningful to me, though it is meaningless from an outside perspective. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Soft disagree. We should have punishments in order to discourage people from doing specific acts, but at the same time, if we can integrate people into society successfully, less of said acts will be committed. So it's it should go hand in hand, really. Because let's say that somebody stole a car, right? And you wanted to drill home that it's wrong to steal a car, and you send them into jail for 2 years, and that is perfectly fine. They served their time, they received their punishment, but then they come out, and nobody wants to hire them because it's written that they have stolen a car, right? And they can't find a job. So no matter how much good intentions they have, they can no longer function in the society, for the society have found them to be completely taboo and just like kick them out. So they will once again resort to stealing, this time to survive, for that is the only thing that they can actually do. It has to be even. You can't just do that to people and hope that like the crime rates will go down, because that specifically does not work. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. I'm trying to figure out how they mean it. I'm gonna take it as literally any criminal, including the ones that aren't getting out, because that's how my head read it. Yeah, if somebody is on death row, then what's the point in rehabilitating them? They're not gonna see the light of day again. You know? The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. No. Technically, sorta. There's things that a society needs to live. Primarily things like food and water. You don't necessarily produce those with manufacturing. There's things that society definitely needs to exist, such as medical care. We absolutely need to make sure that the basics are taken care of. But anything above the basics is kind of extra, and the cultural enrichment, the ability to fantasize, to see things, beauty. It's very important to us as a person. Without it, if we strip that out of society, it's gonna be a very depressing society for a lot, so no. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly disagree, because that should be up to the family. I feel like there should probably be a dedicated homemaker that is a single adult in any family, or that will resort in the most energy considerate way living, with the least stress induced on the people. Of course, they can decide to share 50-50. Unfortunately, we now just force all adults to go into the workplace, because it's very hard to impossible to survive off one wage, especially if you have children. And I disagree that this person has to be a woman. It has to be what is right for the household, which is up to the household to decide, not up for me to decide. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Yes. No, wait, yes. Yes is in that direction. Like, by this point, my brain's mush. Damn you, evil joke, for suggesting this. I didn't realize that I would go on for over an hour trying to explain all my answers. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Strongly. Kind of disagree, like, soft disagree. You shouldn't be out there screaming fuck you at all times, but losing the ability to reason and losing the ability to need to protest and just giving in to that flow is not a good thing, and it's in no way tied to adulthood. Astrology accurately explains many things. What does this have to do with politics in any way? And where's the button where it says I do not give a shit about this question? Soft degree. I like to look at the horoscope for the funsies more than anything. Plus, hearing nice things about your day will just put you in a good mood and make you more likely to do nice things. Normally, horoscopes really do not work out for me, but I do encompass some of the qualities attributed to the star formations that have been present when I was born, so figure that one out. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree because morality is subjective. I do not believe in the objective morality and a lot of things that religions will tell you are horrible. Nobody in those religions will follow, such as mixing fabrics. You all do it, motherfuckers. What the fuck? Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. I disagree because we should have that social security safety net, but I do believe that charity should still be a thing, especially if people want to volunteer their supplies and their time. I think that that is a beautiful thing. Some people are naturally unlucky. You know what? Yes. A lot of things in life will also depend on just kind of throwing a whole bunch of dice forward and rolling a correct number, and you can just not have that function. This is why some people, they live in complete poverty, especially artists, and they die feeling that they have achieved completely nothing, for nobody has ever appreciated them, and then 50 years later, they're like celebrated as the best thing ever. This is a great example of just like being born with a critical fail on your luck score. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Strongly disagree. I'm not an atheist, but you can't even be instilling my religious values into any children. At least I definitely would not suggest you to try to instill my religious values to any children, because oh dear if you do. I find that personal spirituality is a choice that is probably right for a lot of people, and a lot more people should be considering to have that side to them, but it is not up to the establishment to decide anything about that side or to try and instill that side into people, and it is also not up to other adults to decide that for their children. It should be a personal decision that the person arrives later in life, for that is natural, for they will know what is good for them. 6 out of 6. We're getting there. We're getting there. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. What the fuck does this have to do with fucking political spectrum? Please answer that question. Strongly disagree because some people stay together but never marry. For example, completely anecdote, okay, but there is a witch in Mexico. It's a man. Brujeria. They're called Brujeria, which to me is funny because to me that's very close to Bruja. In his family, whenever a family member from his family, especially males, they marry, their spouse will die in 1 to 2 years' time. It is an accepted family curse. In order to not subject this curse to his current partner, they have decided to never marry. According to this, they would be usually highly immoral. But then again, this probably would also see witchcraft as highly immoral, so morals are subjective. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption, of course. Any adult can marry any adult, and in fact, I would be here being the unpopular opinion penguin that says that polyamorous relationships can work and function, and it is completely up to the adults that decide to be in this kind of relationship, not the outside world, not lawmakers, not anyone else. What happens in a family behind closed doors is up to the family. As long as nobody's being abused, as long as nobody's being coerced and forced into situations, two consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want behind closed doors. And that should not eliminate them from being able to take care of children. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Strongly agree, and it is legal for the adult population in majority of places. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. Kay has quite a few little joke laws that nobody is enforcing. For example, you can't technically show or record spanking. Physical damage. Please don't tell these lawmakers that blood play is a kinky thing. Please don't tell these lawmakers that people can cause a lot more pain to each other than that just for fun, because pain and pleasure are kind of similar-ish in the way that they get your nerves going, and a bit of pain with pleasure is just a more exciting thing. It gets weird when state starts entering that. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Well, strongly disagree, because what do you think? I suppose people do think that. You don't choose your attractions, which means that it is a natural thing. It doesn't mean that from... It doesn't matter if from the nature's point of view, that makes you a genetic dead end. Being born with severe disabilities from nature's point of view can also make you a genetic dead end, but that doesn't make it unnatural. Unnatural would mean that it was man-made and manufactured, which is not a thing. Therefore, no. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Slightly agree. I think that a lot of this should be more private than it often is, but at the same time, I find it weird that sharing these kind of things was to be made taboo, so neither. And let's just scroll all the way down and whoa, fair enough. It put me like smack bang in the middle of left libertarian. I actually done that before, and it put me like 2% on the left. Now I'm like 5% on the left. So this just changes whenever I do. But I do not pay much attention to this. What we're gonna pay attention is the fact that Marta just spent an hour 15 minutes trying to explain to you her choices. I hope this has been an informative thing. And if you have any commentary on this, please leave it in the comment section down below. See you soon, my lovelies, in my other videos.